really different essence of presentation in terms of everything like that. I'm Athina. I am the co-founder and head of operations of Owiwi, and I would like to discuss a little bit more about a buzzword that we are listening out there. It's gamification. But there are so many different aspects around gamification, game-based assessment, gamified assessments, and everything that we should be clarifying today. So, setting a little bit around the scene, gamification has raised a lot of attentions in HR professionals and HR tech scene. As Anne mentioned, there has been raising huge amounts of funding for companies that they're saying that they're gamifying processes or they're doing things. But what exactly is gamification and how we can utilize that? Either we are a job board, either we are a company that it's recruiting, or a recruitment agency. So, gamification is, before that, a number that I would like you to see. This is the number 10,000 hours is the hours that an average millennial is spending playing games until the age of 21. It's 10,000 hours. It's a huge number if we consider that it's exactly the same amount of hours that it's needed in order to complete high school. So we have a typical form of education, which is school, and a non-typical form of education, which are games. So how we can take all those hours and make them resourceful, useful, and creative for all those millennials. Also, I used a mainstream phrase, because I'm Greek, from Plato, that said that you can discover more a person in an hour of play than in a whole year of conversation. So, how you are taking all those hours used in gaming in order to attract and gain things about your candidates. So, what is gamification? Gamification is actually using gaming techniques in a non-gaming context. This sounds irrational, but actually that's the point. Gamification, it can take place even in real life. For example, in Sweden, they had an amazing application of gamification that they had a huge problem with people exceeding the limit in driving. So what they did, instead of giving fines to the people that they were exceeding the limit in driving, they were actually photographing the people that they were having good driving attitude, and they were inserting them to a national lottery that they could win by the end of the month. So by this technique, that it's actually a gaming technique, but in a real-life scenario, they managed to decrease by 45% the exceeding in how they were driving, some of the limits of that. So taking some game techniques like rewarding, taking some game techniques like engagement, that it's extremely important in job boards, we utilize them in contexts that are not gaming to achieve some results. We will talk about the mechanics of gamification, but keep in mind that gamification is not actual games. It's the mechanics behind the games. It's what keeps us motivated. It's what makes us go to work and be happy about that. What keeps us apply for a job, or what keeps us going to a specific job board. What gives us motivation. And I will give you some examples of that. And here's the difference. It's completely different talking about gamification, and it's completely different talking about gamified assessments. Gamification is taking these small mechanics and inserting them to specific contexts. Gamified assessment is actually creating an assessment, a traditional assessment, that it's measuring specific things and trying to make it more gamey, game-like. So we create the assessment like a typical questionnaire. I do agree, I strongly disagree, and then we put it on a gaming context. And how we do it? On game-based assessment. Two different things. I know it's a lot of information, but keep in mind, here is gamified assessment and here is game-based assessment. Why I mention that is because when we talk about gamified assessment, it's actually create the assessment and then make it a game. When we talk about game-based assessment, we have a small mini game and we are trying to see what it measures. For example, I don't know if you have seen some applications that you are trying to tap very quickly, and based on how quickly you tapped in the screen of your phone, it measures and collects data points and it gives you some results. This is game-based assessment. The previous one, that you have the full experience of the assessment, it's gamified assessment. The difference is huge, although it seems to be very identical because the first one, it has more scientific grounds. The second one, it doesn't have, because it doesn't have published papers that they can actually connect performance with the data-driven, as you mentioned in the justice data previously. So actually, in what we did in my company, we took the traditional assessment that we all know. Okay, I overreacted with a PC, but I wanted to show the contradiction. And it has this format. I agree, I strongly disagree. What am I doing? I think everyone knows, I have seen that. And we translated that to this. So we have created an online video game that while you play, it takes all your actions and translates them to your psychological profiling. You have to choose the best and the worst choice, and from the result of that, it actually generates all your competencies profiling. It's fully automated, and it's backed up by a platform that it generates all the data and creates norms and benchmarks. And it's actually used by more than 100,000 applicants around the world right now. I would like to give you a little bit more on
a sturdy sailing ship bound
the
for
form
places
of
long
how it
forgotten,
looks like when you enter
places
that.
only in legend and superstition. Lord Ashcroft, famed explorer and sea captain, leads as he has always done. With vigor and ambition, he is the first to see the prize, to speak the precious words, "Land ho!" When you signed on, Ashcroft scoffed at the rumors you had heard about these cursed isles. Instead, he wooed you with talk of the untold treasures locked away in these ancient ruins. The isles themselves are quick to point out Ashcroft's error. The storm tossed the Intrepid from wave to gigantic wave, like it was a toy in a boisterous child's bathtub. You struggled for your very lives. For some, the struggle was too much.
So this is how the game begins. So instead of replying that you are new in a new department, you are doing that, your manager calls you in, it's a totally fictional scenario that behind that, it has all this scenario that I mentioned, that you are new in the company and you are doing some actions. This is the format of that, and the reason of the format like that is in order to be not discriminated. And what we mean about that this game, it has to be an equal field opportunity game. So it has to be understandable from people that they haven't even played the game once in their lives. That's why it is like that. It has a dilemma in the center, so you have to choose the best and the worst choice. It is mobile supported because when we began, we had in mind that when someone is inviting you to undergo a recruitment experience, you want to be in your own space, at your own pace, on your PC, but we saw that 75% of our users, they were actually using their phones to undergo the assessment. So we worked a lot on our experience, and actually one of the fundamental changes in our game was when we inserted the avatars. We saw that the fact that we were giving the opportunity to choose an avatar in the beginning of the whole experience, it made them more immersified and it made them keep more inside the game and use other gaming features that we had inside. This is in more for a specific scenario that you can see how it looked like. So, what we can measure with game-based assessments or gamified assessments? We can measure personality traits, but not only. We can measure cognitive, we can measure applicants' knowledge, we can measure skills, and we can measure everything, all the characteristics that are supported to perform, to predict job performance. So anything can be supported and can be measured by that. But something that it's really, really important to understand, especially in job boards, is do you measure intentions or behaviors? Because those are two different things. When we're talking about personality, we're talking about behaviors. Because those are all the time that you're going to have a personality assessment in your life, the results are going to be the same because it doesn't have drastically changes. But when we are talking about soft skills like resilience, decision-making, flexibility, adaptability to change, or learning agility, those things have to do about intentions and they do change. They're being trained. So soft skills are all the personal attributes that have to do with our interaction with other people. And this is extremely important because it has been referred from all the previous speakers how important are now in the modern job seekers market and how they should be utilized. Because when we have a job board, we have the data that they're being worked from the SEO, the hard skills part. But if you cannot combine also the soft skills on the profiling that you want, so the actual fitting will don't be so adjustable. So what we should have definitely in mind when we work with concepts like that. First of all, what all of you want to achieve, engagement. But in order to have engagement for the users and for the end users and also for the agencies is you have to give feedback, always. And it has been mentioned yesterday and today, even an automated feedback, but not the feedback as we had in our minds the previous year. For example, you are not a good fit for our company, thank you. That's not the feedback. The feedback has to be more personalized and more constructive on the candidate. Secondly, it's really important, the progress. In order to have engaged users, you have to give them incentive to go again and again and progress and develop some skills. And it's really important because gamification gives you the tools to make that, and it's really easy to implement. The freedom of choice and the storytelling, it's extremely important. The freedom of choice, because that's how we talk about employer branding, the freedom of choosing you instead of someone else. And storytelling is what actually keeps you coming again and again and becoming a returning user or a returning customer to someone. Also, the importance of the platform behind every tool like that in gamified assessments. You cannot just have a standalone game or a standalone application without having a supporting platform that it utilizes all your data. Because you don't have like that, actually, first of all, you cannot monetize, and secondly, you cannot actually talk about data because you don't gather them, you don't work with them, you don't utilize them. And this is extremely important in your cases because you can have even more streamlined processes. For example, when someone uses your job board and he doesn't receive CVs or targeted CVs, it's because sometimes the job ad has not been written right, or it doesn't have combined things. But if we integrate a solution like that in a job board, we have as many users using that, so we have data and we can go reverse engineering and see what goes wrong by your side and you are not receiving enough CVs or targeted CVs. So utilize your volume by using gamified assessments. So, a question that I've been asked a lot, but what about familiarity? Is it really for me? I'm not a gamer. I was never playing games. It's something really new. It's something about millennials. I'm grown up. I'm completely agnostic for the concept. Yes, but the research has shown that on the typical assessment, you can easily cheat them, first of all, and secondly, you can easier manipulate for the results, and it doesn't have to do with the concept. It has to do with the openness to the experience, and that's the most important part on that. So from A/B testings that we run in different populations, and we had from ages to 20, 35 years old, 40, 45 years old, and 45 plus, so we went to the really executive teams inside companies, we saw that it doesn't have to do with the familiarity of the concept if the assessment has been designed well and properly in order to be understandable by everyone. So the best thing is to have a great design if you want to make the users use it and not the gaming aspect. By the end of the day, it's the return on investment that you're getting and not the first experience. So it's ideal for mass recruitment, definitely ideal for mass recruitment because it filters better, more targeted. Secondly, it combines also white, but also blue-collar assessment and recruitment. Why? Because it has to do with two different cases. For example, we have a big bank who is a company of us, and he has just purchased one skill. He has just purchased integrity, work ethics. So he's assessing everyone about work ethics through our game that it takes approximately 10 minutes. But we also have a company that it's recruiting for drivers, and it's using our tool measuring about their accountability. So it's in your hand what you're going to measure, how, and in which segment. What do job boards have to win by that? And it's all that I mentioned earlier, but I've used that. You have access to talents outside your radar, and actually you can help this technology in order to have a better machine learning technique. And I mentioned machine learning because definitely what was being mentioned, but all the previous speakers, is that AI is commonly used, but I doubt that most of the companies out there actually utilize AI techniques. Most of them are using machine learning, and this can help you utilize better your techniques around machine learning. Secondly, it's about the data. And because we talk about data, it's about combining different sources of data and trying to mine those data. I saw that look because you mentioned data. Thirdly, ease of use of the candidate. Everyone can use that, and it takes so few time. Imagine a candidate that he should go to your job board, create profile, or create CV, insert his CV. He won't do it because they're bored and because it's in terms of convenience. So what you're doing, they're playing the game, they have the results, and they use even the results, the copywriting, to actually build the CV in your base without even doing nothing. So when you send them to recruiters, you have more sophisticated candidates, because it's completely different when someone has a very generic CV that says, I have graduated from this school, I've done that, and it's completely different when you have a CV that says, hey, I have very high levels of resilience, for example, and I have decision-making skills, but I'm not really good in learning agility. It's a more sophisticated candidate, so it's a more sophisticated hire. What are the benefits? The benefits of that, it's actually that you can identify talents, you can attract talents, you can use it effectively in screening, and also you can improve performance. Why I measure performance? Because a feature that we have integrated in our platform is that you actually, every 6 months, you monitor the talent. So once he comes in, he undertakes the assessment. After 6 months, he undertakes again the assessment. So we have a comparative graph to check if his skills has been developed or not, because in some cases, we have seen that skills have been also regressed. How? Because we have a very good candidate, he enters a company, he has a manager that he actually cannot really manage him properly. So even if he has a specific good amount of soft skills, he's losing them because of that. So you're not utilizing your talent properly. And finally, for reasons of employer branding, because we ran a survey the last 2 years that it's called Applicants Reaction, and we actually saw how people and candidates were perceiving this experience. So after this survey, we had a second survey and meta-analysis to show how it was affecting the employer branding of the companies. So we saw that the companies that they had used that, they had an increase in their social media interaction with the candidates more than 43% after using the tool, because the users, they had the functionality to share that with their friends on social media, so the company was receiving more CVs, and the users, they had more interaction with the social channels of the company. Some important KPIs to have in mind if you're considering to integrate some techniques like that. First of all, about the improved selection outcomes. Secondly, the reduction to hire. Of course, it's automated and it measures how the time is being increased by that. Increased social media engagement with the employer. It's what exactly I mentioned. Also, time saving for screening CVs. I have to mention that in order to be completely right, it's a complementary tool. It does not replace any other typical forms like interviews, but it can save you time in order to be more targeted, the interviews around that, and also lower cost per hire. Two specific features that we have integrated in our platform and we have seen that actually were very useful for all the users. First of all, we have development areas. So when someone completes the assessment, it's absolutely for free. Anyone can go in our platform, play the assessment, view his report. You can go and check it out. After that, we have specific development areas that we are working on. So based on how you scored, we have the development areas that you can work on. And now we are working with EY, the EY University actually Foundation, to build a specific content on what kind of courses based on the development areas you can develop on that and make it even more specific. And also in most of the cases, we're also working with clients like PwC, which is a client of us, in order to create content based on the company training initiatives that they want to pursue. So it's really important. The second feature that it has to do also with the previous presentation, in order to make it more end-to-end, is to actually, when recruiters invite someone to undertake the assessment and he finalizes the process, our system generates specific interview questions to make him. So it's an end-to-end process. You invite him, he undertakes the assessment, he receives feedback, and then you have his data and what to ask him or how to develop him. An example of that is we had this specific client that actually he was a kind of small firm. He didn't have an employee branding. He was in an environmental industry. He was not receiving enough CVs, and he was not receiving the proper CVs. He had really outdated formats. So he worked with us the previous 4 months. He integrated this in his systems, and he actually managed to, you can download this case study through our website because it has all the steps that we followed, how he utilized that, how he received more CVs, and how he placed employees in less time than he used to be in the previous years. And I would like to close the presentation by saying what is the real challenge behind that. The real challenge is not making something look beautiful or making something look gamey. If you have the budget, you can actually do that. The real challenge is actually creating something that it can be understandable by everyone and it will be science supported. That's why we should really, really dig deeper into science. Every time that you're searching for a provider out there for gamified assessment, ask about their scientific background. What is their validity, contract validity, predictive validity, anything around their data. Ask about that, and if you feel that you don't receive the answers, don't go for that. Thank you so much.